This week, the European Union, United States, Britain, Australia, Canada, and Japan began imposing a cap on the price of Russian oil. They've set the limit at 60 euros per barrel. That's about $63. The plan is to reduce the amount of hard currency the Russians may receive to continue their war in Ukraine. Will this work? What are the chances that peace talks to end the war may begin soon, maybe by early next year? Well, here with us is former U.S. Congressman from Florida and former U.S. Ambassador to the Vatican, Francis Rooney. Ambassador Rooney, it's good to talk with you again. So what do you think of this EU Western powers plan to deny Russia hard currency by capping the price they'll pay for Russian oil?
Well, I think it's good to try to deprive them of all the hard currency we can, but I'm not sure that the 60 euro amount is going to really be effective. I mean, supply and demand for oil is global, and they'll sell their oil elsewhere if they don't sell it to Europe.
Well, why not just stop buying Russian oil altogether?
That's what I would do. I would just cold turkey say, we don't want your oil at any price.
Why are they hesitant to do that?
Well, because Germany's got themselves in this real tough spot of being so dependent on Russian energy, and it's hard for them to get totally off of it. They're all scrambling to get LNG and alternates and fire back up coal plants and fire back up their nuclear plants to try to figure out a way around the dependency that the German government's created on Russian oil and gas.
Ukrainian President Zelensky predicts a cold winter for his people as the Russians have destroyed much of the country's electrical power grid. He says there will be hardship and terror, but he says the Ukrainian people have something the Russians do not have, and that's the will to protect their homes. So their strongest motivation to endure is that. Your thoughts on that? Few people expected the Ukrainians to hold out this long.
No, I certainly didn't expect it either, but they're kind of like we're on the other side of the coin from where we were in Vietnam. We're fighting with the people who are fighting for their home, not against them. And we've seen it in Vietnam. We've seen it in a lot of conflicts that when people are fighting for their home, they can really outperform expectations. And of course, the Russian army has underperformed expectations in their lack of organization, lack of training, lack of will to fight.
Well, still, it seems like Putin is digging in his heels. And what do you make of reports that he is ill, that he fell downstairs, he soiled himself? Do you believe he has cancer or some other illness? What do you make of that?
I don't know. I was just talking with a senator friend of mine about that last night at a dinner here in Florida. And, there have been some reports that he looks puffy, like he's on some kind of cortisone or something. But I don't know. I wouldn't count the guy out till he's in the box.
Well, what's the likelihood that peace talks may start soon?
I think there's an increasing likelihood of that. Macron, was just over here, and it's very important that the Germans and Macron and maybe even England be involved in any kind of talks. It needs to be a NATO-wide approach to this thing, and so it's good that they're starting to talk a little bit. We can't let Zelensky do it; he won't do it.
Well, it seems there's been a hesitancy to even go down this road. What's the holdup?
I think that the countries have probably had some more discussions behind the closed doors at NATO and by telephone of Western leaders and things like that meets the eye. But I think they've been waiting till they get to the point where they think they can make it work with Zelensky.
And what should the U.S. do now then?
Well, I think we need to supply them the next level of range of missiles that we can, that are still short enough not to be able to fire into Russia. And I think that's an important point. We need to be able to say to Russia, we didn't sell them anything that they could fire on your homeland with. But if we keep supporting them and they keep fighting, sooner or later, they're liable to win this thing. I mean, they've got the Russians pinned back to the very eastern ridge of the country now, and now they're starting to move south.
And there's some thoughts, I guess it was Elon Musk who was wondering, why not just give up some of your land, Ukraine, for Russia, and then it would be the end of it? What do you think?
Well, that's what Henry Kissinger said, too. I'm not sure that they need to do that now. I would have said that early on. You're not going to dislodge them out of Crimea, so why don't you just let them have Crimea and they stole and move on? But now I think Zelensky's aspirations are raised, and if they start moving south towards Crimea, I don't know whether they would go for it.
And finally, there are some calls in Congress for more accountability on the money and the weapons that the U.S. has sent to Ukraine. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that's a very good idea. You know, we've had a history of massive corruption in the Ukraine, and that's part of why they held up sending in those Javelin missiles for the first couple of years of Trump's presidency. And then they finally did it. Very corrupt country. They're trying to become a democracy, but they don't have it all figured out yet. Especially in the light of all this COVID stuff, whatever the government spends, they need to make sure they spend it right for once.
Okay, accountability, and we'll wait and see what happens with peace talks. But it will be a very cold winter in Ukraine. Former Congressman, former ambassador to the Vatican, Francis Rooney, thank you for taking the time to share your insights.
Thank you for having me.